What up, everybody? I would be doing some guitar covers right now, but my phone is being retarded. I'm sorry. So, instead, I'm going to talk about what I'm sure many people will be, doing reaction videos to, and oh my God, wasn't this so crazy and violent and ooh, do 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 do. Well, you know what? Horror movies, practical, especially ones with practical effects. That's my jazz. That's my wheelhouse. So, you know what? Infinity Pool, eh. I wasn't very disturbed by it, honestly. I and I also like. I think I saw the theatrical cut. I mean, let's just hypothetically say I paid to see it at the theater. Let's just say that. And let's just say that in a parallel universe, when Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor was announced, and just after its Sundance, or I think it was Toronto Film Festival, or premiered, I can't remember. But in any case, a very, very good quality version of it was leaked in this parallel universe, and I watched it. And at first, I was like, "That was kind of stupid." I thought that was going to be cooler than it was. But upon revisiting that film, I actually really like it. I think he took a very simple premise and with aesthetics, very impeccable directing, very compelling practical effects, very that you can tell a lot of love, a lot of passion went into, and some underlying themes that to me are essentially like pretty on the nose Jungian animus psychology type themes of identity, masculine, feminine traits. But that I can go over that film with a fine tooth comb if you really want me to. It's not as profound as some people may think it is, in my opinion. But I really enjoyed Possessor. But again, I had to watch it a second time, and maybe with Infinity Pool it'll be the same thing. But personally, I found Infinity Pool to be kind of stupid. I'm not gonna lie. It was, yes, impeccably directed. The acting was superb, especially for Mia Goth. Superb. Um, and I could uh, visualize where I think a lot of the inspiration for it came from, because like the movie is a very, and if you don't pick up on this, it's probably because you're either not someone who knows much about David Cronenberg, um, the father of Brandon Cronenberg, who is like his old body horror films were like really some of my favorites. Like my personal favorite is The Brood. I think it captures trauma very well, and then Videodrome is a close second. And I think this movie, and with the point I'm about to make, I think this is kind of ironic. This movie is very similar to Videodrome, I think, thematically. Um, all the way down to Debbie Harry's character and Mia Goth's character being these kind of seductresses that are sort of leading around these male protagonists who are like they're in it for one reason or another. In Videodrome, it was much more, no pun intended, fleshed out. Max Wren is clearly all about getting the most exploitative, shocking material that he can air on his television station, um, so people will tune in. And so he gets embroiled in that world of depravity, and I think there are very interesting sort of concepts like the transmission of information and how we absorb these signals of media and they become part of us and they mutate us and they change us, they program us. I think there's some legitimately interesting social commentary there. Um, Unfortunately, Elder Cronenberg, in my opinion, has not made a good movie in a long time. I saw Crimes of the Future, and I thought it was like really like flippant and silly and yeah, I mean, apparently it was a script he wrote in like the early 2000s, and it shows. It shows. It was like this was I could tell like, oh, this was something that came out around the same time as that Al Gore documentary on climate change, and oh, people finally realizing that maybe we are like treating the planet like shit by littering, filling up the seas with plastic and so forth. But again, that's a different movie. I can go into it if you really want me to, but I personally don't think there's that much in Crimes of the Future that merits going into. I like the history of violence. Eastern Promises was okay. Um, I didn't like that Don DeLillo adaptation, and I'm a big fan of Don DeLillo, Cosmopolis. Um, I thought it was just pretentious. And I haven't read the book. I've read Don DeLillo's White Noise, though, which I found was amazing. Found it was really immersive, and it did a great job of taking these very boring, like average milquetoast characters and turning them into, you know, people who are kind of relatable because we can all relate to what it's like to fathom this scary notion of having to be displaced to like a FEMA camp or something because there is, as in White Noise, the book says, the airborne toxic event or something like that. It's been a long time since I've read it, and I gave the book away, unfortunately, to someone who probably didn't read it. No, I'm not in touch with anymore, but um, so I mean, I really like his stuff, and I liked, as much as I find the movie Crash fucked up, like not the shitty Crash from the early 2000s. No, I mean the adaptation of the novel, the J.G. Ballard novel from the early 90s that was like rated X, the David Cronenberg one. That movie is fucked, and I never want to watch it for the rest of my life, but it was fascinating. Some of the points it made were really, really like hit the nail on the head. But getting back to the subject of this video, Infinity Pool. Um, so I think the concept, or at least what Brandon Cronenberg seems to be going for with the concept of the Skarsgård's character um, being in this country where you know any crime is penalized by execution, which is kind of silly. And I mean, the movie has some self-awareness of how silly the concept is, and there are some great moments of humor, like very dark gallows humor that I thought were like the most redeeming qualities of the movie, other than Mia Goth's performance, which is beyond impressive. Like she is legitimately psychotic in it. Um, but I, yeah, I gotta say I was disappointed. Maybe the director's cut is like way more violent than the movie. And I'm not saying the violence is what makes Brandon Cronenberg movies. Like his first movie, Antiviral, I really thought was stupid. Like I just like it was just such an on the nose. Oh yeah, parasocial relationships. We want to be so close to celebrities, and like an antiviral for those of you who haven't seen it. And if you haven't, honestly, you're not missing out on much. It's basically this world where, um, essentially, like there's a company and people pay to get these venereal diseases and shit that other celebrities have had so they can feel closer to them. And there's even like a deli that like clones the muscle tissue of celebrities and people eat it. It's just like, and I'm a fan of surrealist horror. I love David Lynch. I love Junji Ito. But it just was like trying a little too hard, I thought. And like the reason I bring this movie up is because I think it's relevant to the plot. And like this is where I'm going to start to kind of get into spoiler territory. So if you do care about seeing this movie and I mean, it is very well shot. It's very well acted. I think it's worth watching. And like Possessor, I might enjoy it the second time around. The first time, I just was like kind of disappointed. I thought it could have gone into some far more interesting places, but didn't. But like I think like as I was saying, you can kind of see where his inspiration for it came from. Like he said that it partially came from a bad vacation, and the movie is essentially like, since you're supposed to be executed, if you're rich enough, you can buy a clone, and they kill your clone instead, um, because of some weird international treaty. And the rich people, like they get off on this, like this rich elite group. So it gave me kind of uh, uh, like hints of like Epstein Island and shit like that, or just rich people like Andrew Tate going to other countries and being like, oh, I can get away with whatever the fuck I want here as long as I have enough money to buy people off. Like he's even said that, if you have enough money to bribe people, you can do whatever the fuck you want here. Um, and that's kind of what they do. They just, they go around just fucking killing people, and again, they get executed over and over and over and over. And so Skarsgård's character, for one, one thing I want to point out, Brandon Cronenberg seems incapable of writing dialogue that is at all naturalistic, but I can't tell if that's deliberate or not. In Possessor, it made complete sense because, for those of you who've seen the movie, like that Tasha Voss or whatever, Andrea Rose character. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right. She's like this assassin hired by corporations, and what they do is they'll like kidnap someone who's like close to a target, and they'll upload her consciousness into their consciousness. And after she kills them, she's supposed to kill herself, or she'll carry the guilt and so forth, of the individual who she used as a host. Now, by the time the movie starts, she already is like experiencing this disconnect with her own humanity. So it makes sense that her dialogue is unnatural. Like you see her reciting stuff that she's going to say to her family when she goes in and has dinner with them at the beginning of the movie, which is, I thought was interesting because everyone does it. Everyone kind of rehearses things in their head. Like I remember I did a public speaking course years ago, and they said, don't rehearse things, just say them naturally. Like, and it's like that's a good point, but it's easier said than done. Like I try to do that, but I still will find myself like before I go into a place, like I'll be thinking like, oh, say, oh, hey, how's it going? What's new with you? Sort of thing. Like we're rehearsing these ideas in my head. Um, and so yeah, I mean, like I let it slide with Possessor and Antiviral. It just seemed like okay, these people are fucking all deranged. But I mean, it just like that whole movie just seemed like this surreal fucking like hot pot of like like weird uh dissociated people, who live vicariously through media and celebrities and whatnot. Um, so I didn't like, but the whole movie itself, I thought was just so like, how do I put it, like so devoid of substance and trying so hard to do something, to push a narrative, but like a very surface level one, and then had these surrealist sort of body horror scenes mixed in to sort of give it, an air of something deeper, which I don't think it merits. And I've seen that movie multiple times, trying to convince myself otherwise. Because after I saw Possessor and was like, "This is really good," I revisited it and I was like, "No, I still don't like this." And believe me, I do not have a high fucking threshold for uh, movies that I consider good or bad or in between. And I don't think Infinity Pool is bad. Um, I think it just like I think the main reason it was made, just going back to the inspiration part, is just because Brandon Cronenberg was like really emphatically saying, "Stop conflating me with my father. I'm not my father. I make my own stuff. I do my own work." And it's like, but dude, like you do practical effects, body horror, surrealist type horror films. Like there is a like pretty noticeable comparison to be drawn there. Like yes, Elder Cronenberg, when he moved away from the body horror stuff for a while, when he did like History of Violence, Eastern Provinces, Cosmopolis, and came back to form with Crimes of the Future, which is actually same name as his first movie, which I saw and thought was like kind of weird, but I was like, whatever. He was a student when he made this. But I mean, otherwise, I love Elder Cronenberg's body horror stuff. As I said, The Brood, one of the best depictions of trauma I've ever seen. Videodrome, amazing. Fly is a classic, but I really think it's like it's probably I don't know, maybe my fourth or fifth favorite movie that he's done. Um, I think he's done much more personal, better movies. But like there's a scene, and this may be spoilers, I guess. But there's a scene where Mia Goth is essentially like just reading all these reviews about how bad Skarsgård's book was, or his character's book was, anyways. So the whole thing is he's this writer, and he's only written one book, and he married the daughter of the publisher who published him, just because he married her, and so she's like reading these reviews, and it was very obvious to me that it was like how Brandon Cronenberg felt about what people were saying in response to antiviral when it first came out. Like she's like, oh yeah, he tried to say he was doing his own thing, and he still lives in his father-in-law's shadow or something to that effect with his debut, and like it's very obviously him being like stop fucking conflating me with my father, Dad. I'm not my father. And it's like fair enough, fair enough, fair enough, but like you know, show it, don't say it. Um, and also, there's nothing wrong with being compared to one of the greatest psychological horror filmmakers I think of all time. At least with the stuff he did in the 70s and 80s. I mean, Scanners, fucking heads exploding from like telepathic battles. Love it. I love it. Um, but like, there's a couple things going on in Infinity Pool. Like, so, and there's a lot of crossovers between this and Possessor, I think. And I sort of thought the same thing about this and Brandon Cronenberg, as I did about Panos Cosmatos, who did Mandy, Beyond the Black Rainbow, and The Viewing. And I kind of came to this realization when I saw The Viewing, which was an episode of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. And Panos Cosmatos, he makes a very, to me, very similar films to Brandon Cronenberg, in that there is a lot of nostalgia, a lot of very interesting camera work, a lot of weird surrealism and body horror, and like extreme levels of violence and drug use, sex and nudity, blah 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 blah. Really, really pushing the envelope. Uh, and both those films, or sorry, yeah, both of those directors' filmographies, I think, are very heavily inspired by giallo horror films. And I mean, Brandon Cronenberg said this himself. After Possessor was screened, he said that, I think he said Dario Argento's opera was like one of the main inspirations for the practical effects. And he is very good at practical effects. I think his practical effects are beyond impressive. I think they were the best part of Possessor. Um, like Sean Bean getting his teeth ripped out with a fucking fire poker and then his eye ripped out. Like, oh, it's so brutal. And the transformation sequence where they're uploading Vosh's consciousness into the host body, and it like shows her like melting into this wax figure and then forming again, and she looks like herself, but then she's got the hands of her male host, and then the hands turn into the host body. Boom, she's him. Like, that was a very cool sequence, I thought. um, and the rest of the movie is them kind of fighting for dominance over his body. Um, but Infinity Pool has a sequence which is so similar to that transformation, where they're cloning them. And like, I gotta say, like, as cool as some of it was, like, just like Panos Cosmatos and Viewing, I'm kind of starting to get the feeling that Brandon Cronenberg and Panos Cosmatos, as much as I've loved the films they have done, are kind of one-trick ponies because they seem to do the same things over and over and over again. Like, yes, lots of psychedelic, unnatural lighting, brutal fucking violence. Um, I would say there's probably more like subtext to Brandon Cronenberg stuff. Uh, I mean, Panos Cosmatos with like Beyond the Black Rainbow, I thought that was more abstract and like interpretive, or made to be interpretive to the audience. Whereas Mandy and The Viewing are like pretty cut and dry as to like what the hell's actually going on. Um, with Possessor and like antivirals, like as I said, it's all very on the nose. It's all very surface level. You don't have to be a fucking rocket scientist to understand it. Possessor and Infinity Pool both have a lot of elements of psychology. I think again, going back to the inspirations, I could see what probably transpired to inspire Brandon Cronenberg to make Infinity Pool, because he said it was about a bad experience he had while traveling. And like, the thing is, the character, Alexander Skarsgård's character, who's basically like an empty vessel. Like, yeah, he's not really much of a character, and as I said, I think that worked in Possessor because it was like, oh yeah, she's becoming like an animal. She's like not killing people like she's supposed to. She's like fucking like violent, torturing them, and like she's like a predator playing with their food, sort of thing. Um, so there's more justification for her character not having many characteristic attributes, especially not likable ones. And that's the thing about his films is every character in his movies are detestable, and I think that isn't necessarily a bad thing, um, but it can be. And I think in this case it kind of was because like, it's hard to endear yourself to something when it feels like, yeah, all these people are fucking obnoxious and awful, and like something terrible should fucking happen to them, and blah de blah. But there's just, other than Mia Goth's character, and I think that was just Mia Goth being Mia Goth. Like, she fucking really, really embodies the character she plays, like in X and Pearl, and she's very fucking good. So I think that was her. But otherwise, Skarsgård is just like, he's just fucking going along with fucking everything's happening. Like, he gets this sandy fucking handy like on the beach, and just like, no protesting, no like, oh, why are you sticking your fucking hand in my pants and grabbing my dick? Like, he's just like, oh, this feels good. Like, he's just kind of like this empty vessel, and it's like, okay, I think I know what's going on here. Brandon Cronenberg probably went to like a visa and did like what he thought was like MDMA or something, and it turned out to be like some weird like research chemical, and experienced like ego death over and over and over again, and like was like, oh, I got an idea for a movie, but let's make it literal. Let's make it so like these are clones who are being killed off, and then let's make some social commentary about how if you want to be, in any elite circle, be it, like a rich investor, Epstein, a Trump of the world, you gotta kind of you gotta sacrifice parts of yourself to get there. You gotta do horrible, hideous things, um, and you won't protest. So, like, maybe there is some justification to him being like so fucking passive and obedient and just like he doesn't protest when they tell him to do like very fucked up things. I mean, he's kind of like it's obvious to me that he's trying to do anything to save his own skin, but that's about it. He's just operating on a very primal level, which is like, okay, you did that in Possessor too. Um, but yeah, so I think that's kind of like the inspiration. I could totally see that. I could be wrong. I mean, fucking Brandon Cronenberg. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong and explain to me why. I would love to. I would love to know. Um, now, and also, I mean, he's never gonna see this, but I'm not shitting on the movie. It's very, very well directed, very well acted, but the dialogue was terrible. I thought the plot was just like kind of nonsensical and like really did lack cohesion. I mean, that may change on a second viewing for me, but overall, and I also need to see the director's cut because I was actually surprised. I was weirdly surprised by how like there was a lack of violence compared to Possessor, and there's more so disturbing implications. Um, and like, oh yeah, like rich people can, if they have enough money, get away doing whatever the fuck they want, using other countries as their own playgrounds, Epstein Island sort of thing, if they got the fucking bank to do it. Um, Now, it's, I think, called Infinity Pool because, and this is, major spoiler territory, is like it ends with he's about to take a plane out of this fictional country, which, and let me just say a few things about this fictional country. It's a, it's, it's in itself just very kind of hard to take seriously. Um, like, I can't quite tell what culture he's trying to garner inspiration from. Like the chancellor or whatever, the guy who's like giving handing down the penalizations, explaining the process to Skarsgård and everything. Like he sounds German. Other people look Middle Eastern. There are like weird fucking like caricatures in the movie. Like they're like I'm not even kidding. There's a scene where you briefly see these like Hasidic Jews, and they got the big fluffy hats. But they're like really big, and they've got long Pinocchio noses, and it was just like, okay. Are you saying this is just how like rich people see the fucking world? They see people as caricatures? Like, yeah, okay, sure. That's valid, but you don't have to make like a protocols of Elder Zion type, like Jewish stereotype that you see for like a split second in the background to get that point trip of dehumanization through you know, Westerners sort of just running amok in other people's countries and with their cultures and so on and so forth. Co-opting their cultures for themselves, like that was already like very emphatically fucking conveyed. Like just hammered that point down again and again and again. You don't need to show the long-nosed fucking Jews to get that through. Like, I just thought that's very unnecessary. Otherwise, like, yeah, just the like the practical effects, like they're cool. Don't get me wrong, they probably put a lot of work into them, but it didn't strike me as like something I hadn't seen before. Like I felt like I saw kind of all of that in Possessor. Like, there's a very psychedelic sort of sex scene. I guess if you want, it's kind of psychedelic. It's got sort of the giallo horror, like unnatural, bright colors going on and everything. And, like the way Skarsgård's character is like completely broken down and like dismantled, um, like down to the very depths of his being. Um, like he's selling his soul so he can get a seat at the table. It's like okay, another movie saying the rich people are evil and perverse and will make you evil and perverse if you get in league with them. Yeah, I mean, this is well trodden ground as far as social commentary in movies go. Um, and like I personally I like movies with a little bit more subtext that's a little more subtle than that. Like if like Inland Empire is the perfect fucking example of that. David Lynch's Inland Empire, like it is so fucking bizarre. It is so surreal. It'll probably piss you off watching it because of how long, how tedious, how disconnected the narrative is. But like there's so much room for interpretation because of that. And like I think I know what's going on in Inland Empire, but at the same time, I know there's a large chance I'm wrong. And I think that is if you're gonna go for that style of abstract horror, then you should be making something in a way where it's like like Lynch refuses to give people to this day refuses to give people any hints as to what his movies mean. A lot of people think that he doesn't even know what they mean, which is probably true. I wouldn't be surprised, but there is meaning there, whether it's working on a subconscious level or a conscious level, because his movies use dream logic very well. Now, it, it's clear to me that the real distinguishing factor between young Cronenberg versus elder Cronenberg in terms of their body horror um, films, like there's a lot more uh, of a an obvious giallo horror influence on Infinity Pool and Possessor. Not so much antiviral, I think, but more so, yeah, the ones I just mentioned. Whereas, David Cronenberg stuff was more like uh, um, surrealist nightmare, like nightmares translated into images and a lot of people came away with it, with this interpretation of, well, this is about TV and how TV is bad for people, and David was like, no, that's not what I'm saying, and so people have continued to speculate since then, and I think yes, it is a lot deeper than that, and I think um, yeah, no, I gotta say again, it's so ironic to me how much similarities there are, how much contrast there is between Videodrome and uh, Infinity Pool. Especially the Mia Goth character and the Debbie Harry character. They're both like crazy, like seductive sadists, uh, and they sort of use their power over men who are like, you know, just desperate to have some sense of validation. Like, at the beginning, Mia Goth is like, "Oh, I loved your book. I loved your book," and like, it's clear he's never heard this from anyone. But then she's reading reviews towards the end where she's just like embarrassing him with these reviews about how bad the books are, and yeah, again, like, oh, living in his stepfather's shadow sort of thing. Like I, like that it just was like, okay, we get it. People compare you to your dad all the time. Boo hoo hoo. People compare you to the guy who pioneered fucking body horror. I mean, Dead Ringers is one of probably my favorite horror movies ever made. I would say I almost like Dead Ringers more than Videodrome. Um, and like it's interesting because that one's like inspired by a true story, but it's obviously taking some artistic liberties. It's these like uh, because it's Cronenberg, it's a pretty fucked up narrative. Uh, so Jeremy Irons who plays the twins? I can't remember, but the guy who plays the twins, very very fucking good actor. He did an amazing job playing these twins who are gynecologists, and one of them's really awkward. Can't talk to him. The other is the opposite. He's very charismatic. He's a ladies' man. So they do this kind of fucked up thing, like a switcheroo, where the charismatic one will like essentially coerce a woman into having sex with him, and then his twin will go in and sub for him. Like it's believe me, and that's not even like the tip of the iceberg when it comes to how fucking crazy that movie gets. But I love it. I love it. It was done so well, and there's so much depth to it. Whereas, yeah, with Possessor, I think there is um, like a case to be made for, as I said, like the fight between the anima, the animus, the parts of our brain, the evolutionary parts of our brain that are programmed towards animalistic tendencies, and how these separate us from being human and from uniting ourselves, like our feminine and male characteristics, in such a way that it affords us the capability to be moral individuals. Uh, or like people are capable of doing good moral deeds. I think that's very much the case. Now, what else can I say about Infinity Pool? I mean, again, I have to watch it again. And I really really want to see the director's cut. I've heard about like the things that I guess I didn't see, like a dick getting a hand job, which um, you know, I'm not weeping over missing that part. Um, I did see the hand job scene and the jizz spurting on the beach and stuff like that. And like, there was also an element I thought at the beginning when I was first watching it of like, because you see his fucking jizz like go onto the fucking sand, and I'm like, oh, so this is how they're gonna clone him. They're gonna set him up, and like they basically like they just use the fact that he is like very coercive and kind of willing to do anything to either just save his skin, and that would be speaking highly. I think it's more so he just wants to be a part of something, be a part of a high tier group where he feels some sort of independence, but he's like completely through his actions defeating that independence by just doing whatever these fucking crazy elitists want him to do at their behest. Um, like, just, yeah, I mean, he felt so empty and like, I get the title of the movie because as the film ends, again, major spoilers, like he finally gets his passport back and he's gonna leave, and the rich elitists are leaving. And they're like, "Oh, hope to see you next year." And then, of course, he looks at his ticket. Next scene, he's on the beach, and he's not leaving, because he's found some sort of purpose here, whether he can explain it or not. Um, so it's going to be on repeat. Um, and yeah, I mean, I really, really hope that both Panos Cosmatos and Brandon Cronenberg um, are not, in fact, one-trick ponies in terms of their directing styles, because, like, I really like Mandy. I thought Beyond the Black Rainbow was fucking crazy. Like, I watched that while I was tripping, and I was like, dude, what? But then I watched the viewing, and I was like, this is kind of like the same thing. He's rehashing sort of the same things, like, oh yeah, melting faces, like excessive drug uses, big rips of fucking coke, and, you know, sort of giving in to all these urges that we otherwise would, have boundaries against. But but Panos Cosmatos, he has different reasons in each movie for why these things are done, which I could get into in another video if you really care. But for the sake of trying to maintain some level of brevity here, which I'm doing a fairly bad job at. Sorry. I just, these are comparisons I feel are necessary to be drawn in my mind, because I think these two directors have a lot of talent, and I think they have a lot of like capacity to do things that are unique and original, and like it is a fucking breath of fresh air. I must say, as a horror aficionado, I love practical effects. Like like my favorite show, for example, Utopia, and that's high praise because like I'm a big like buff when it comes to TV shows that are really good. Like speaking of Alexander Skarsgård, Generation Kill was fucking amazing. And speaking of Generation Kill, one of my other favorite TV shows, The Wire. Um, but I like Utopia and The Wire for very different reasons. But Utopia, I won't get into all of that because that'd be a lot to unpack. But I just want to make a point here. So it was really, really well directed, really well written, really well acted. The score is one of the most amazing, bizarre, surrealist scores I've ever heard. And like I just loved everything about it. And I loved the the commentary, the social commentary in it, which is ambiguous, and that's a good thing. It should be. I like movies where if the audience goes in and you like stop them as they're coming out, and say you're a reporter or whatever, so you have a reason to be like, oh, what do you think this meant? What do you think this meant? I think you get a different answer from everyone if it's done right. But I think with movies like Infinity Pool or you know like Mandy, back to Panos Cosmatos, like, it's fairly obvious. It's fairly on the nose what the message is. And I think the thing with Infinity Pool that also kind of hampered it in my mind is, see, there was too many messages going on that conflicted with each other. Um, like the main takeaway, as I said, that I got was, "I'm not my dad. Stop fucking comparing us." The other was he probably like I don't know did shrooms and Ibiza, had a bad trip, ego death, etc. Probably with someone he was having a toxic relationship with. I don't know. Maybe I'm speculating, but all he said is it came to him. The inspiration came from um, a bad experience he had while traveling. Maybe he was in an ayahuasca circle and he did ayahuasca and had a terrible fucking time. I don't know, but it is very clear that there is an element of ego and ego death in Infinity Pool. Um, but yeah, it's the whole elitist rich people getting away with X, Y, and Z because they have money. Like it 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 feels really ham-fisted in there, shoehorned in there amongst all this other stuff. And all the other stuff is like if it was done in a sort of more Lynchian way, where there's just less pretty clear explanations, be it through dialogue or through um, images, uh, uh, explanations of thematic elements, then that would have worked better to have this sort of like stew of ideas going on, but it just felt like, oh yeah, this is what I'm saying, this is what I'm saying, no, this is what I'm saying, no, this is what I'm saying. And it's like, okay, let me process the last message before we move on to the next. Um, yeah, so, I mean, again, I think he is very talented. I think his dad's very talented. And, you know, honestly, I could see why he would want to have an untethered career from his father's career. But the thing is, it's like, dude, you make body horror films. Your father is the guy who pioneered body horror. So, you know, you can't really whinge too much about that contrast being made, or that correlation being drawn by a lot of people. I'm sorry, dude, but like maybe if you're making romantic comedies or something, people wouldn't make that fucking comparison. Uh, Please don't. Please, for the love of God, don't. Especially if your dialogue is going to be the same way it was in like your last three movies. And again, that may be deliberate. It may be that it's just deliberately not supposed to sound natural, but it's like when you have an element of social commentary, like gender roles in Possessor. Again, I'm giving Possessor a pass on the like really like awkward sort of the very detached dialogue because of the themes of identity loss and fighting to sort of become self-actualized in a way. I mean that's my takeaway from Possessor. Anyways, you might have a different one because I think Possessor did a more effective job of the narrative is very simple, and I like that. I like that. I like that the narrative was simple because it allowed for him to say in the subtext that there are some ideas I'm showing you here, that you might be able to glean into something that means something to you that's independent of other people's interpretations. Infinity Pool does not have that. Maybe it tries, but it just completely fails, in my opinion. And like, there are also aspects, I think, of like hard determinism, because as I said, Skarsgård's character, he's kind of like this shell. He's this husk. He's just, he's just doing whatever he's told, basically. And he just doesn't. Yeah, I mean, he's just such a like fucking two-dimensional character. And like I really can't stress that enough. I think that's intentional, but like they basically set him up in a lot of these crimes, and so there is a question of whether he is truly guilty or not. And there is, and I hate to use this term because I feel like I sound pretentious when I do. I don't mind using the term lynching because I think it's justified, but Kafkaesque. Um, there was very clearly, and for those of you who don't know, Kafkaesque is named after the author, and what I think it's trying to describe is, uh, geez, I mean, it's been a while since I've read The Idiot. I read like half of Metamorphosis, and I was like, this is just not my thing. I mean, people really seem to like it for some reason, but I really didn't care less because the main character turns into a fly or whatever. Is kind of like a hideous person to start off with. The Kafkaesque is like, okay, something is happening, and these people are being brought through these strange circumstances, and we don't quite know why. Um, and so, like, the idiot is, sorry, not the idiot. The idiot is Dostoevsky. I'm sorry, I don't know how I fucked that up. I think it's called The Trial or something like that. It's been so long since I read it. It's the one where the guy is tried in this like secret court and he doesn't know why, and they want to execute him, but he doesn't know why. And so I think, oh, what is it? This is called? Here, I'll look it up right now.